everybody. Mike and Andy here. Mandy, if you want to just give us like the nickname. We are here. We're back in the world headquarters, the Vox World headquarters, Brea, California. Last episode we were live in Placentia, which is a real city.
Yep.
California at Villain Studios, which was totally appropriate. And we did a live show, our first live show. We had 60 of you come out, which blew our minds.
Yeah.
That so many of you, and the feedback you gave us was just ridiculous and great. So we're so excited about that. Much news in the Vox community to share with you briefly. Number one, as you know, many of you know, we have another podcast. That is the podcast that is the teaching and story from our little church plant in North Orange County called Vox Community. So the Vox Community podcast is more of a Bible-y teaching, and then some of the very raw stories, particularly this last week.
Yeah,
oh my goodness, Alex, our buddy
Alex had a
shared
great
his
story this last weekend.
So there's that. Andy has been working on something called Patreon, which is a playoff of Patron, and it's a way for people to regularly contribute to artistic and creative endeavors, right?
Yeah.
So different from Kickstarter, which is a kind of, or GoFundMe, which is a kind of a kickoff phase.
Yeah, like a project-based fundraising.
This is more of a support. So Andy, tell us a little bit about what you're cooking up.
Yeah, so in a week from the time that this show will come out on Monday, we'll officially have the Patreon page up, and there'll be a few different levels of how you can contribute and with amounts, with different fun incentives that go along.
Yes, there's some ridiculous incentives. And by ridiculous, I mean literally ridiculous, like unbelievably dumb. But here's the reason. Number one, we love that this is a lo-fi production. I mean, we're just two guys in boxer shorts in a room in Brea, California. And but we also realized, so we did this forum, and it was amazing, but it cost us about $800-900,
yeah, something like that,
to pull off, and so that was coming out of yours truly's bank account, which pretty much exhausted it. And
so this will be a 15-minute show today,
and everybody, no, and everybody was saying we got to do more of these, and we'd love to do more of these. So we want to get into publishing a couple of ebooks. We want to get into maybe launching a third podcast. And so we're if you're able and it's joy for you, we'd be thrilled to have some supporters to help offset some costs that are beginning to increase as we begin to explore more the intersection between the church that we've started and the podcast. Mm-hmm. Because we keep hearing from people, hey, there's a third thing that's missing, kind of as we translate a podcast into a church, and so this live thing was just amazing. So anyway, if you're open to that, great, no worries. We don't want to do advertising. We'd rather just do this, and so many of you have been so incredibly generous. So there are some cool incentives. There are some ridiculous incentives, but you can check that out. Where, Andy? Where would you go to check that out? Well,
so that will be available on the Vox Podcast website. So voxpodcast.com at the contribute button, and it will take you out to Patreon from there.
So Subversive Kingdom is done.
Gone.
We hate it. You hated it. You did. It
was an eyesore.
Oh boy. It was an eyesore. Well, that's because we had nothing else to put up there. So my picture was all over that thing, which, that's an eyesore. So voxpodcast.com is where you find this podcast. Voxoc.com is the church website, correct?
Right.
Okay. So and then there you go. So that's all big. That's all big news. The other big news this week, Andy, the mommy blogger world was shattered with controversy this week when Jen Hatmaker, who I only know because my wife, evidently she started out as a blogger. Yeah. She's written some books that are pretty cool, about warring against excess and justice and compassion, and she's got an HGTV show, which good Lord, like we need more of those.
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm a bit surprised that you actually haven't even brought up the World Series. Mr. Ohio over here.
Oh, I'm still mourning. This is the day after. But here's the thing. So my brother and I were texting, and he just said, look, who would have thought that the Cleveland Cavaliers would have won an NBA championship and the Indians would be in the World Series ever in the same year? Right. So we can't be greedy. So God bless the Chicago fans. Happy for the Cubs fans. They totally deserved it. I'm bummed that we weren't at full strength with all of our pitching. But
yeah, Charlie Sheen didn't show up.
Charlie Sheen was nowhere to be found. No, but I mean, last night was like one of the best baseball games I've ever seen. I'm not a huge baseball guy, but wow, that Game 7 was so much tension. I kept running up and down the stairs, just avoiding the game or watching it or replaying it or whatever. So yes, but anyway, that's not nearly as significant to the mommy blogosphere, which blew up. So Justy, my sweet wife, is a huge Jen Hatmaker fan. Jen and Brandon, I think they have a church, or I don't know much about it. I mean, I don't, she made me watch the show. My wife made me watch the show once and whatever. But she came out in an interview and said that not only does she affirm same-sex marriages, but she believes that they are holy. And if you've been following kind of her thinking for a while, I don't know how surprising that is or what, but of course, controversy erupts once this becomes public, and Lifeway, a big Christian distributor of books, stops selling her books, and the internet is torn asunder.
Yeah.
As evangelicals now, dive at each other, and it's all sad, and it's all predictable. And it's interesting because, on the one hand, the arguments I hear in favor of same-sex unions are, the Bible doesn't talk about them. The kind of homosexuality or lesbianism condemned in the scriptures is not what we're dealing with today. The Christians who wrote this were not familiar with the idea of orientation. They were not familiar with the idea of genetic basis for things. They were not familiar with any of these sort of modern concepts. And so what they're speaking of is they're speaking into exploitative situations. They're speaking to cultural phenomenon or idolatry or temple worship or whatever. They're not speaking to modern consensual same-sex committed relationships. And so I've heard that argument. The argument, though, that was at least the word that was new, and then her husband, I guess, came out and wrote a big post on Facebook about, hey, this is the journey we've been on. But the positive declaration that it's holy. So there's one thing to say the Bible's silent on it. It's another thing to say that we would think the Bible would declare that union holy. So I think that was the word that, got everyone kind of riled up is, okay, well, how do you get that from the Bible? And so, my wife, God bless her, pulled me on to the Facebook discussion that was going, and it's just the same thing. I mean, it's just, on the one hand, you've got conservative folks feeling like, well, there's just another in a long line of people caving into the popular consensus of the day. And you've got other people saying, no, finally, I mean, come on. You Christians have had your heads in the sand for so long to the realities of sexuality and gender and whatever else. So it's just interesting, again, to just rinse and repeat. And the thing that's so terrifying is how rarely Christians treat each other well when they disagree. That's the thing. Yeah. That's the thing that's horrible. Is, okay, let's disagree. Let's say I disagree with Jen and Brandon, and I think they miss a point. Is protesting, commenting, flaming people that agree? Is that really is that the Jesus way we're going to handle this? I mean, come on. So
what's the fine line though between Jesus having his harshest words for his own culture and the Pharisees versus Christians like actually, going at this pretty hard at each other?
Yes. Oh, that's such a great question. Well, first of all, Jesus condemned the Pharisees in two contexts, or actually three contexts that I see. One is when he was around them, so he confronted them directly.
Yeah.
So that's a thing, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't just taking shots at them from far away.
Right.
He was looking at them as he's talking about them.
Right.
He talks about them to his disciples as a point of contrast. Beware the leaven of the Pharisees. And then there are times when either directly or indirectly he will undercut the agenda of the Pharisees. And in an honor and shame culture, sometimes he'll do that very indirectly.
Yeah, okay.
But it would be perceived as very direct. To us, it feels indirect. But the point is, the conversation Jesus was having with them was face to face. It wasn't on social media. It wasn't, and Jesus did absolutely save his harshest words for those who should know better. The issue is, how do we embody, if you're at that level of disagreement, how do we best embody that in our world? Mm-hmm. Is it sitting in a chair in California writing Facebook posts? How do we best have these internal conversations in a manner that keeps Jesus beautiful, that allows his beauty to show, that honors and respects and all of those sorts of things? Because whereas Jesus can be trusted with righteous anger, I'm not sure we can. I think there's, we've talked about in the podcast, there's a place for anger, but we always have to ask, what does it come from and where does it lead to, right? And Jesus is the perfect model for what that anger looks like. So is it appropriate at times to be angry at hypocrisy, to be angry at false teaching, to be angry at whatever? Well, of course. I mean, you see Paul going after false teachers. You see Jesus himself warning people away from wolves and going after Pharisees. But at the same time, we dare not begin to see ourselves with those kinds of ministries. See, it's the self-anointed prophet that is the problem. It's the self-anointed rule keeper, and I'm gonna make sure your doctrine's lining up, right? I mean, this is all to be done in community, according to the New Testament teaching. So we are to test and to hold on to the good, and so yes, I mean, feel free to disagree and feel free to lament the state of evangelical Christianity. But the issue Jesus is always going to bring it back to is you. Who's the biggest sinner in the room? Is their sin a 2x4, or is it a speck of dust compared to yours? Right? I mean, the answer is really clear on that. So yes, if we want to present an alternative set of teaching, well, great, let's do it. Like people that supposedly have the truth should not be so afraid of other ideas.
Right. Yeah.
So let's engage in very respectful, fun, joy-filled disagreement and see what comes out of that. But just it's the social media flaming that just does it. And I get it. I've been a part of it. I've been on the receiving end and the giving end. I get it. I'm not just some old guy saying, "Oh, those kids on the internet." The answer is not less internet.
Maybe we should be.
Maybe we should be. But it's just the whole thing. I lament the whole thing, regardless of where you stand on the issue. I just lament the predictability of the whole thing. Now, so anyway, so that was
okay. Thank you.
That was a big thing in the Erre household was Justy and I. Justy saying, "What do you think of this? And how are you with this?" And because she's like, "Well, Mike," she literally said, "Are you? I feel like you're going a little liberal on this." And I'm like, "Well, it all depends on the definitions, right?" So anyway, who knows where this will go? But again, it's like politics. You just see it coming, and it's so sad that it sucks everyone's energy into these sorts of things. So here at the Vox Podcast, we just want to give the right answers. All right, that's our job. We're not ever gonna. No, so we have been accumulating. I don't know. I probably have, Andy, maybe 100 questions that have been sent in by listeners over the last year.
Yeah.
And, hey, could you talk about this? Could you answer this? And I feel like I at least owe one episode to just trying to plow through a few of these.
Okay.
And so let's just give it a shot. Let's just see. We'll call it a grab bag or or Q&A with EH,
Q&A.
Like you're Canadian? Q&A?
Yeah, Canada's from question. Or questions from Canada.
Questions from Canada. All right, so here's one. So this is Mike and Andy doing Q&A All right, so I don't know why
I don't know if any of these people actually are from Canada, by the way.
So here's a question. A woman wrote in, what if you are married as a man and a woman, then your spouse comes out as transgendered and starts taking hormones and dressing more feminine or masculine? What does the marriage between one man and one woman, where does that fall in there? If they are changing their name and identity as a different gender, excuse me, than what you married them as, what would Jesus say? Not sure if there's a clear answer, but this is a huge discussion. So this literally happened to this lady, and so what would Jesus say, Andy? What do you think? Go.
I have no idea.
Right.
I will start with that.
So I think when this person's asking what would Jesus say, I think this person's asking about the state of the marriage.
Yes,
would
that's
Jesus
what it
say,
sounds like.
Yes, would Jesus say, and this gets into the subject of divorce and remarriage, which, man, that is a massive, massive can of worms. Traditionally, and we don't have time to get into it all, but traditionally, some forms of desertion were accommodated in Judaism as grounds for divorce. Now, there were several schools of thought. One very liberal one that said you could divorce for any and every reason. One very conservative one, which said you can only divorce for sexual infidelity or a general catch-all phrase for various things that constituted sexual infidelity. Jesus gets brought in this debate and sides with the conservative view. Paul seems to open up a desertion exception in 1 Corinthians, and so again, I'm not your spiritual authority. I haven't thought this through. I think the first thing Jesus would say is that he's heartbroken at a marriage that began in one way has now evolved into something else, and the disappointments that the questioner must be feeling, the disappointments, the anger, the betrayal, the sadness, who knows what range of emotions. I think Jesus grieves all of that, and then you've got the person that's changing in the midst of, they were married as let's say a man, and now they feel like they want to identify as a woman, and all that's going on with them. And Jesus grieves over. But would Jesus prohibit a divorce in this? I can't speak for Jesus. I would simply say this does feel like a form of desertion to me, and that if separation and reconciliation and all those things, go nowhere, and the spouse is dead set on, no, this is where I'm going. I could either foresee just a permanent separation if you don't want to use the divorce word, and or I could see, I'm open to the idea, I should say, that Jesus would permit you to divorce in this case. Now, again, I'm not giving any background about divorce and remarriage. So if you're gonna, people are gonna fire back and say, what about? Okay, well, we can do a divorce and remarriage podcast. This is not that. I just want to grieve with somebody that, after however many years of marriage, there's been the bait and switch, and then the spouse that is, whatever's going on in the spouse that is making them feel like now they have to identify this way. And if there are kids involved, what do you do with those kids, and how do they process this?
Right. See, I think, because part of me thinks, like, if this was something unsaid prior to the marriage, that was like an orientation thing for a long to me, that's kind of where, if this was like, I'd never thought about this prior, and this was all of a sudden, like, in the past, whatever, X amount of years we've been married, I'm realizing this.
Right.
That's what's interesting to me, is because then it's like, was this something that wasn't a complete truth made to the person you're marrying prior to marriage?
Right. Did you know this ahead of time?
Right.
And did you hide it?
Right. So because it's like,
or did something change over the course of whatever, how many years?
Yeah.
No, that's a good deciding factor too. I just think, and again, we have to be so freaking careful. There have been many circumstances where one spouse has left, and the Christian spouse, or the still walking with Jesus spouse, is sitting there going, okay, so do I sign the divorce papers or not sign the divorce papers, or do I initiate the divorce when this person just wants to keep, the marriage official, but they've left the building? And I mean, all of that is so hard, and it's so specific, and there's no universal answer. I just always hold out the option of, well, you don't ever have to sign anything. I mean, if you just say, nope, the thing's over, you never have to agree to the divorce. You can, other person initiates it. Well, I'm just not going to sign it. Sorry.
Yeah.
You may need to do it for legal reasons, or, in order to remarry, if you feel like that's permitted. I mean, blah, 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 blah. But I mean, these sorts of moral dilemmas were not, the Bible is not a rule book that is used in cases like this, or to even anticipate cases like this, right? What the scriptures are is there's this library that all revolve around the story of God's outworking and rescue of human beings in the midst of history. And so N.T. Wright uses this incredible metaphor about what kind of authority the Bible has in these sorts of questions. He says the Bible, like understanding the Bible, interpreting the Bible, is kind of like a 5-act play, where the 5th act is only partially written. So let's say you're an actor and you are performing the 5th act. You have the first 4 acts in front of you, and the beginning of the 5th act and the end of the 5th act. But there's this big gap where you don't know how you are supposed, what the author would have you do in every scenario, and you're invited to improvise in a manner consistent with the first 4 acts, and the beginning of the 5th and the end of the 5th. And that the author, I'm pushing his metaphor beyond what he does with it, and that the author is willing to help guide and shape your improvisation, but is never going to write the lines. And so here we are improvising in a situation where a man and a woman are now a different thing, some sort of different thing. So you can either confront the spouse that's changing and say, you are in sin, you are abandoning this. I don't care what you choose to identify as, you married this and you've got kids and da-da-da-da. You can go to the spouse that's the one that's feeling betrayed in all of this and say, well, I think you're permitted to divorce and then to remarry. You can go to both of them and say, is it possible to try to work this out over the next 3 or 4 years together in the midst of couples therapy and exploring like where this is coming from? You guys willing to give that a shot? Right. And all of those, you could make a biblical case for each direction. Right. So, to me, this just highlights the absolute necessity, because the Bible can be used to beat everybody up. The Bible can be used to excuse anything you want. The Bible can be used to almost justify anything you want. So to me, in these sorts of pastoral situations, how do we come alongside? And when someone asks, hey, what would Jesus think here? Well, I always think, well, he grieves. He's hurt. He's grieving with you in the midst of this. Yeah. This is not his intention. Right. For you. You did nothing wrong in this. This isn't your fault. It's not because you're not man or woman enough or whatever it is. This is more about the other person. But then where do you go with that, right? Yeah. There's no quick fix. So anyway, there's no answer other than just processing it and going, my word, these are real situations. And so if the church just is silent, well, that doesn't help. Or if the church is legalistic, that doesn't help. So the best we can do in this situation is talk, is to discuss and to see if the Spirit guides and leads in a specific way. Any thoughts?
No, I think that's good. No, yeah.
I just thought, wow, what? So this is a separate question. These are, I hate these episodes because all the questions are so good. One huge difficulty I had with sex is getting married. How great a line is that? For 35 years, I was taught good girls don't do bedroom things, keep your thoughts pure, and don't tempt yourselves or others. Then with a 30-minute ceremony, a nice barbecue dinner, and some cake, I was free to do whatever felt good. Don't get me wrong, ... lots of fun, and we figured things out quickly. However, it took a bit to not feel like I was doing something I wasn't, quote, supposed to. I don't know if it makes any sense, but it's not something that gets much attention from the church. We covered it briefly in premarital, but again, that was a bit off since, well, our mentor couple has been married 50 years. But they were filled with amazing wisdom in every other area, but yeah, not so much with this. And I've actually talked to couples who've had a very similar thing. So they've been taught, and this is to Christians, they've been taught that sex is dirty, naughty, bad, to stay away from it, to save it for marriage. And then there's no help with how do you flip that switch? How do you flip the switch of, I mean, I love how this person says it. A 30-minute ceremony, a nice barbecue dinner, and some cake.
Yeah.
And now it's all good, right?
Yeah.
And you can see why people outside the church just go, oh, all marriage is a piece of paper, then why not, right? What's so sacred about the 30-minute ceremony, the cake, and the barbecue? Mm-hmm. So we want to do at some point a series. I don't know if there'll be forums like we did the live forum, or we'll do a series of podcasts on sexuality, where we'll get into this. But I think you raised something that's really, really important, namely that the church, in my experience, again, my narrow experience, the church has done an awful job presenting the positive case for sex. And what I mean by that is the first command in the Bible, the rabbis have a field day with this. The first command in the Bible of the 613 commands of the Torah is be fruitful and multiply. Mm-hmm. And last I checked, God made that super fun, right? He could have had us like plant children in fields. He could have grow them in bakeries. We could have done the Matrix.
It could have been the Matrix. That's what I was going to say.
But instead he said, no. I got this great idea.
Yeah.
We got this gender thing and it's going to be awesome. And so the Bible starts with this amazing, yes, like penises and vaginas and arousal and release and kissing and fondling. I mean, that whole thing, and even people reacting to me using these words. I mean, the Bible is so explicit in Hebrew. Oh my word, is it explicit in Hebrew, particularly Song of Songs. That is crazy. And so I've taught through the book like 3 or 4 times. And every time I come across something new that's like, whoa. And people are so scandalized by the book, they've actually said, no, it's kind of a metaphor for how God loves his people. and certainly,
even if that's the case, it's like, whoa,
that's weird.
That's weird.
Certainly marriage is an incredible example. And romances, God talks about wooing his people and romancing his people. But I also think this is just Hebrew love poetry that was read at weddings and celebrating the beauty of and there all the different words for love are in there. Mm-hmm. The friendship love, the romantic love, the sexual love. I mean, all of those words are in there. So all that is to say, we don't hear about this much. What you get instead are abstinence education. See, that's the dumbest thing ever. It's like, hey, here's something that's great. Don't do it, which just increases massively the amount of interest in it.
Right.
Save it till marriage. But what's marriage? Even in the church's eyes, well, often marriage is just a ceremony in front of a pastor with barbecue and cake and giddy up. Mm-hmm. And so if you've imbibed a view of sexuality where it is the temptation, it is the thing that you're constantly at war with. It's that part of yourself that is dark and animalistic and well, then no freaking wonder when you're at your honeymoon night going, okay, is this okay?
Yeah.
Is this all right? And so you have two extremes. You have some people who don't take sex seriously enough. They think it's just a physical thing. The scriptures teach, no, this is soulful. This is soulish. There's something that is deep and profound that happens here. There's a union that is created here. But then you have people that take it and they've been presented with the negative view so much, they can't flip around to feeling okay. And so like when I talk to my son, and I hope Big Nate isn't listening to this,
probably is with this type of commentary on our
seriously our that's true. But Big Nate and I have the most incredible conversations about sexuality, and they're never it's bad. They're always it's incredible and it's incredibly powerful, and that's why you got to make sure you're channeling this in the appropriate ways. It's like electricity, man. Mm-hmm. Electricity is an incredible gift, but with everything that's powerful come rules that govern its use, right? You just can't treat electricity because it's so powerful. You can't just treat it however you want to.
Yeah.
In the scripture, sexuality is that powerful. And so it's something to be enjoyed, protected, nurtured. It'll be a source of temptation. Yes. It'll be a source of disappointment once you're married. Yes. It'll be a source of whatever. Yes. But fundamentally, the Bible starts with it's good. And we just never hear that. The Bible, the first command of the Bible is to have sex. And of course it gives boundaries to that, and we'll explain all those and blah, 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 blah. But the fact that the church is known more for abstinence and modesty and not just this incredible like view of what it is to be human and what it is to have a body and what it is to make babies and what it is to enjoy the body of another and how cool God is to make all of that like the most ridiculously sensual experience in the history of the world. We just don't ever talk about that. We feel like I would get pushback from church people saying, well, this isn't a conversation for church, right? Sexuality is not a conversation for church. And I'm like, bologna. That's a Hebrew word. Bologna. I'm kidding, but no, I would actually hear people say, well, this isn't for the church. And you're going, are you kidding me? We're drenched in sexual ethics, in sexual performance, in sexual imagery. And the church has nothing to say on this. And so I just totally disagree. I think parents have to model it. I think married people have to model it. It's not the end all be all. It's not the most important part of a marriage. It's not the most important part of being human. You can be absent and live a fulfilling life. You can be celibate and live a fulfilling life. You can be celibate in a disappointing marriage and still live a fulfilling life. Sexual expression is not the highest good. It's not the most important thing. And yet, the Bible presents this beautiful yes before there's any hint of a no. So my response to you is I'm sorry that that's exactly your situation. Yeah. And it sounds like you figured things out and you're okay. But I think you speak for a lot of people who come out of very conservative Christian environments who've never been told that being sexual is a good thing. We were sexual before we were sinful. And that being sexual is a gift. Now, it doesn't feel like a gift. It's fallen. It's broken. It leads to all sorts of carnage in human life. But fundamentally, to be sexual is a good thing. Boom. Any thoughts, Andy?
Nope.
Mike, third question.
Yep.
What time is it? How much time have we been yapping?
32 minutes.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we're not going to get through all these. Mike, how dare you or anyone else apologize for other Christians or anyone besides yourself? How arrogant can you be? Well, very arrogant, evidently. Maybe you were a Christian hater in the past, but don't you dare label the rest of Christianity because of your own faults. I will continue to love the sinner, but warn others about the homosexual lifestyle while God himself claims they will not inherit the kingdom of God. I will stick to God's truth, not man's. Thank you for your feedback. All right, question number 4. So yes, I do apologize on behalf of Christians quite a bit. So yes.
I can't imagine this guy's still listening to us.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, let me go here. Man, there's so many good ones. Yeah, well, see, this is the same question. Okay, it seems as though the only topic of sexuality touched on by the church is abstinence. I would love to understand better why sex before marriage is wrong. Ooh. Why are we taught that any type of sexual thought is a sin? Where does masturbation fall into all this? What type of boundaries, guidelines does the Bible give on sexuality in a dating relationship? As a woman, I was taught at a very young age to be ashamed of my body because it caused men to stumble. Mm-hmm. Okay, first of all, you don't cause men to stumble, for crying out loud. Right. Ever. Men cause men to stumble. Yeah. Right? I mean, that's not... Can we just get over that? Absolutely. Let's see. How can I be a sexual being and a Christian at the same time? Did Jesus ever have a sexual thought? Of course he had a sexual thought. That was one of Big Nate's questions. Oh, yeah. Was like, did Jesus have sex? I'm like, I don't think so. I think he was single. I think he was celibate. He said, well, do you think Jesus ever, like girls? I'm like, well, I think he was fully human. I think, yes, he did. And he said, do you think he ever, had his body react in weird ways? I'm like, I'm guessing I think so. And so Nate was very interested in those sorts of conversations. But, and I mean, and the scriptures say he was tempted in every way. yet was without sin. And so I have to believe some of that was sexual temptation. So again, just reinforcing the point, the feminine body and the masculine body are beautiful things. These were never meant to be sources of shame or to be bad. The Genesis account is when man and woman saw each other, like it was good, like that was a great thing. And so it is sad that in order to protect the men of Christianity from stumbling, that women are taught to be ashamed of their bodies. It's like, well, no, I don't think that's true. Men cause men to stumble. Women do not cause men to stumble. So I'm all for yoga pants. I wear them myself.
Yeah, I stumble when Mike wears yoga pants.
I'm single, 31 years old, and not sure if I want to get married or have children. The church has no idea what to do with me. I love this. Sometimes they just assume that I'm still a lady in waiting and that my heart's desire is to find a good husband. That's not really true. Too old for college age groups because I've moved on from a lot of the issues they tend to struggle with. Most of the groups for people my age are geared towards getting married or they're young couples with children. How can the church make people who don't fit in the traditional spouse, house, kids feel like there's a place for them in God's kingdom? Oh my goodness, I love this. So that's somebody who said, I'm not sure I want to have this, and I always feel like the church is pushing me to have this.
Yeah.
And then there's another comment that says, singles without kids are the most ignored population in the church. We're expected to sit through the annual relationship series and be satisfied with a short PS at the end. By the way, don't have sex. Our wounds and longings from being alone and childless are always overshadowed by the more valued needs of marriage and parenting. Yet higher numbers of people are living singly. Ironically, we have more disposable income, time, and willingness to serve. So there is this, and I think this is really interesting in the Jesus movement, because we're so fixated on marriage and the sanctity of marriage. There is this undercurrent, sometimes explicit, sometimes not, of pressure to have single people be married. And some of those single people really want to be married. They're in the church because they would love to meet somebody and to be married, and they just haven't yet. Mm-hmm. Others of them resent the pressure. So for some, the pressure is actually a reminder of their pain, that they're not what they want to have. And for others, it's an offense to, oh, you're not complete, or you're not, the church isn't for you unless you're married and have kids. We spend so much time on kids ministry, so much time on youth programs, so much time on marriage ministries, and blah, 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 blah. What about all of those people? And the relationship series. Andy, we're never going to do it. Vox community, we're never going to do a relationship series. Can we just do that right now? We're never going to do a relationship series.
Oh, my heart is broken.
We've always said there's no such thing as a soulmate. So good luck. No, we did a podcast on that, and that's about as close as we're going to come. But I think it's really sort of an interesting question, because I hear that even from some of the single folks that are involved with us. Mm-hmm. And it's hard because on the one hand, there are thriving singles ministries out there. But on the other, I've always been suspicious of just singles ministries for the sake of singles ministries.
Yeah, like I don't, that rubs me the wrong way just thinking about it.
Yeah, it just, and again, easy for me to say now that I've been married almost 17 years, feels like 20. 12 of those happily. Now that I have been married, I'm going to say, I hope Justy, what are you doing, Andy?
I'm just thinking, like, what do you do in a singles ministry? It's like intended. It's like speed dating for church.
No. I mean, it's a way for singles to connect with other singles, find friends.
Okay.
It's an alternative to the bar scene. We had one at Mariners years ago, and it was Bible teaching and retreats and events and yeah, there are weddings that come out of that for sure. And some people are there just as sharks,
Yeah. Okay.
But for others, they felt like there was no place for them.
Yeah.
And I've always been a bit suspicious of that too, just because I don't know that the way the church looks best is with married people hanging out only with married people, and people with young kids hanging out only with people with young kids, and older empty nesters hanging out only with older empty nesters, and singles only hanging out with singles, and kids only hanging out with other kids.
Right.
I
think there was a good point you brought up, though. I mean, I think there's even an organizational aspect to the whole thing, though, too, because parents tend to have the loudest voices because they got to drop their kids off in kids ministry. So if you're trying to run an organization, you're responding in like taking care of that part of the building, taking care of them. And yet the focus to kind of, if you want to camp singles into their own thing,
right?
Like how do you actually orient church towards singles as far as inspiration about Jesus?
Yes.
It's kind of like that's where,
and there's two ways to do it. There's one is to make an absolute and intentional effort to call out the demographic of singles,
right?
And to program towards them and to whatever,
right?
I go the opposite way to say, I don't want to sit and talk to married people and single people.
Yeah.
I want to talk to Jesus people.
Right.
Some of whom are not Jesus people yet. Some of whom have been Jesus people forever. It'd be like saying, okay, Republicans and Democrats, let's break up.
Yes.
Now some single people will say, but the church is dominated by families, and so that makes us feel lonely and alienated. And maybe that's true. I'd love your ideas on what to do. What I don't want to do, though, and I'm absolutely committed to not doing, is to just segment the church on the basis of the stage of life. I just think that is so disruptive to the beauty of what the church is to be, where you've got older people and younger people and white people and black people and rich people and poor people. I mean, the whole new humanity idea that Paul spends so much time on is that people who have nothing in common gather together because they've only got this Jesus in common, right?
Yeah.
So I've always been personally suspicious of life stage ministries, and that's made me in the very clear minority,
right?
Like I've gotten a lot of pushback for that.
Like I hear it's like I hear the tension that this person's asking the question, and I think what I'm wrestling with is kind of like, but this is all just a product of the hyper inward mentality of the church on its own. Like we're not talking about a missional thing,
right?
It's like this is, if the church exists for itself and it's like our club memberships, then sure, you would expect if you show up that then there's something for you. Well, then who are you to the organization? Well, I'm a single, ethnic male. Right. So what do you guys have as far as like, what's going to interest me and take care of me? But that's where I don't see the church reaching me. And if that's my desire, the church shouldn't see that as a mission. Right. You see, like the mission isn't to satisfy how I feel in my orientation and context to everything. Rather, how am I moving in a Jesus follower way
is
outward?
Preaching right now?
So, maybe a little bit.
Is someone? I like
because
it.
Like that's, I'm sitting here listening to this and I'm like, yeah, I get all that. But then I'm like, what?
But I also think the church has been guilty of worshiping at the altar of marriage and family.
Yeah, I agree.
And not making room at the table for people who don't fit that. So whether it's single parents, which is a massive, I mean, my goodness, what a massive job that is. Or couples that don't fit the traditional stereotype. What do you do with all these people?
Yeah.
As more and more, when two dads or two moms show up with their kids, right? The church is going to say something. The church has to do something. If we're single because we chose to be, if we're single because we didn't choose to be, but here we are. I mean, so to me, the worst thing to do is to start fragmenting the church around common interests,
right?
Because that's easy, right? That's not gospel,
right?
Easy.
Yes.
I mean, people hang out with who they are and people who are like them all the time. The church should not reinforce this.
Right.
That's not the new humanity, right? That's not beautiful. Like this. See, this is where I get in trouble with a lot of my contemporaries because I just go, I don't see the biblical warrant. I just see church growth strategy, but I don't see biblical warrant for the segmenting that we do. I think we have to resist the consumer impulse that people will bring into the community to say, okay, I just want to, we're all the young families and we're all the parents and yes, of course there are times you talk to them. I mean, Paul in his letters will say, hey, okay, fathers, slaves, masters, talk, women, children. I mean, he'll go through a household code, right, speaking to specific people, young men, older men, younger women, but he's assuming they're all in the same room.
Right. That's what I'm hearing. It's like, I mean, you would address the whole crowd by helping to understand who's in the room.
Come on.
But you wouldn't then specifically orient
Is
things.
Someone preaching now?
Well, you were preaching too, so okay. I don't know.
I like it.
I feel like I'm just sitting in that same tension now.
So for those of you that are single and as part of the church, what does that look like? Help us have an imagination for what that looks like. Because to me, and it does not look like having singles ministry. I just think that's the worst. But we also want to nurture and encourage friendship and families to open up their houses to folks that don't sit around family tables every night and who don't know how to cook. Or so there's this give and take. All right, last one.
Sure.
Oh my goodness, we're literally getting through half.
You really thought that we could get through 10 questions?
Yep. So here we go. I know.
Come on.
At what age?
Those questions especially, by the way.
I know. Well, I was trying to pick ones that would set up future conversations or give us feedback.
Yeah.
At what age is it appropriate to talk to your kids about sex and how? We often hear that men like sex more than women. Perhaps it is true, but I've come across girlfriends who think something is wrong with them for wanting sex more than their husbands so that they can become resentful and they feel undesirable. First of all, what a great problem to have. So maybe it's time to make it clear that it is okay for women to enjoy sex. Yes, absolutely it is. Paul does this thing that's really ridiculous in 1 Corinthians 7, where he says that a woman's body is not her own, it is the man's. Now, that's not controversial. That was universally agreed upon. What was controversial is that the man's body is the wife's, and that they are not to deprive themselves of sex, if only for a short time, and that for fasting or prayer. Mm-hmm. So there is, Paul teaches, the Jews taught, there is an obligation that men have to satisfy the needs of women, an obligation. And again, obligation is not the right word. I just mean your body isn't for your own pleasure. Your body's for your spouse's pleasure, which, who hears that in freaking church? So you have a whole bunch of questions. Number one, how old do you talk to your kids about sex and how? We always did, but we just did it in very when they're learning their body parts, we included that body part. When they began to ask questions about the differences between boys and girls, we would just explain in very simple terms the differences between boys and girls. When they began, when Big Nate, I think it was 9 or 10, began asking, we began talking about hygiene. And I'm like, hey, buddy, your showering now is more than just washing your hair and letting the shampoo run down your body. Okay, that's not washing. That's the waterfall shampoo effect. That doesn't count. And so we get into this huge conversation about hygiene and how his body's going to start changing and blah, 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 blah. And it has to do with being a daddy and da-da-da-da. Mm-hmm. And he finally says, well, what's that have to do with being a daddy? And I'm like, well, and we pulled over the truck on the side of the road, said here we go. And so we just did very age appropriate, fun, positive, not weird, not awkward. Hey, here are things that are going to happen when you touch this place in your body. It's going to feel different than if you touch your elbow. And that's all just part of it, man. Sometimes you'll see mommy and daddy's kiss. That's part of it. I mean, and it was the most enjoyable, funny. I mean, Nate was horrified when he found out the truth that the mommy parts and the daddy's part touch. And he's like, why can't we just high five? So for the next 2 weeks, we would just high five, just say high five. So to me, we have not given one rule at all. It's all about, this is amazing and this is incredible and what a great gift it is. And we try to be very affectionate in front of them. And I try to be I try to be playful and with my wife in front of them, and so it's just part of who we are, part of human. There's no negative message we're trying to convey. So that's as far as I've gotten as 13. So yeah. And Hannah is our 11-year-old, and we've had incredible conversations about what that is too. And the best way that we told her was just by relaying how Nate reacted when we told him. So she loved that. That was the part that was hilarious to her.
That's funny. So that brings some serious levity.
Oh my goodness. So it has been, it's just been this really joyful, fun topic. Now, Nate, we've had internet talks, and we've had, with Hannah now, like, why, she asked, hey, why do boys get to take their shirts off and why can't girls? That's a great question. I said, well, they can. I'd be okay. I'm kidding. I did not say that at all. But then this questioner asks, is there something wrong for women to enjoy sex? No, God actually designed you better to enjoy sex because, well, okay. You've got more equipment you've got some parts that are just purely for enjoyment. We've got multi-purpose tools. So that's, I think that very clearly, and in the book Song of Songs, the women enjoy sex. In Paul's teaching, the idea that the man and the woman have an obligation to each other, and sexually, I think very clearly that women are permitted to enjoy it. I think the thing that we always have to be careful of is, are we elevating sex too much? Are we not taking it seriously enough? The rabbis of Jesus' day taught that it was one of the things you had to do on the Sabbath, because depriving each other of that could lead into temptation. And so, it was just this really interesting approach that we're in Western America, in Western culture, we're just not comfortable with. For the Jews, they believed when a husband and wife made love, that God hovered over the bed. And so they would often, in their bedrooms, have canopies or huppahs that were over their chambers, as symbolizing this was holy and that God was present in the sex act, because life could be formed. You were, when God created, you were creating. And so they didn't see this big separation between sex and soul the way that we see it. Mm-hmm. So even asking the question, can you be Christian and sexual? Well, it shows how far we've fallen from what the biblical view of sex is. Of course you are. You can't help but be.
Right.
The issue is, do you view sexuality as a gift or a curse? Now, it feels like a curse so often because of the way sexuality has been presented. And does the scripture insist sexuality is to be best practiced within a covenantal relationship? Absolutely. So if you want to know why it does that, like what's the ethic behind that? Great questions. That's a whole podcast series. But within that, it teaches very, very clearly that the human body is a good thing on all of its weirdness and all of its just orifices and it's just weird, right? Earwax. Come on. Going to the bathroom. I mean, it's just like, wow. And for the Jews of Jesus's day, this was all like you would actually bless God when you could go to the bathroom. Thank you, God, creator of the universe, king of the universe, for I think, how did they say it? For holes where waste could exit our body. And so you would actually pray and thank God. And if you've ever had problems going to the bathroom, then you know how horrible that can be, right? So there's this. One of the things the incarnation of Jesus does is it dignifies the human body in ways that counter the Greek thinking that we've inherited that's dualistic, that body is bad and soul is good. And so we want to war against that, to say, no, in the scripture, sexuality is the union of body and soul in ways that not much else is. And so, so we take it incredibly seriously and we receive it joyfully. Now, I just feel like I've raised like 8,700 other questions in saying that. So I'm going to shut up now. I don't know. Do we need to put an E on this episode, Andy? Because vagina and penis were mentioned at that point. Masturbation was mentioned. Maybe. I'm
not sure.
SoundCloud. Let me see. What else? I had one other question for you. Earmuff warning, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know.
Sure.
And I need to tell Big Nate that I told the high five story on the podcast, because we still laugh about that one, dude. We still laugh about that. And the other day, I love this. So Big Nate and I were having a conversation, and he just looks at me and he's like, Dad, I like girls. I can't help it. I just do. I don't know what happened. I just do. I like them.
Yep.
I'm like, man, I like them too. And it was just funny because we kept having a conversation about someday, dude, the switch will flip and they go from just kind of these weird sort of playmates to like, oh. So it's just been so hilarious. And we'll get into all the hard stuff. I mean, this is still funny, and they're young and we're still talking about it. So I'm sure I'll screw it up along the way, but it's been really interesting.
Some might say you already have.
Screwed them up? Absolutely. Oh my Lord. Yes. Yes. I think that we can assume that. Isn't that awful though, as parents? It's like, you know that your kids are going to be talking about something in therapy 30 years from now. We just don't know what. Right? When they're like, well, tell me about your family of origin. Oh, my dad, he always played Destiny and he drank Coors Light. What's up with that? Right? He never had time for me. Oh, I don't know. All right. So brothers and sisters, I don't know if this is a good episode or not. I don't know if this is interesting, if you've made it through. I have no idea because we've never done one.
I felt like it gained some speed towards the end, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
so
tell us if you like the grab bag, the cornucopia, the jubilee.
Cornucopia questions.
Of questions. And if you've got them, send them. Because you guys are nonstop fodder for interesting stories, conversations, jokes. You guys are hilarious. So we so much enjoy this. We so much being a part of your life. We really do. And we're very interested in trying to translate faith in this Jesus, submission to the scriptures as they're intended to be submitted to, participation in a church community. We're trying to translate that into, as best we can, into a generation that's just suspicious of all of it and have seen so much abuse. And so, we desperately want to be a part of the solution, not part of the problem. So we're so grateful when you guys, email us or let us know, what we're doing is helping. So thank you for that. VoxPodcast.com, VoxOC.com. Andy, anything you want to add? Patreon.
And then, Patreon will be up in about a week.
Wow.
That's it.
And everyone said, oh, good. More requests for money. So let me do our little blessing and then we're done. What's our time right now?
57.
Oh man. How do we do 57?
We do.
Got half the questions.
We just do.
Oh, all right. Wherever you are, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance to you and may he give you peace in these days. Amen. See you later. Until next time, Andy's yawning. Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Vox Podcast. Learn more about us at voxpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at The Vox Podcast. And as always, comment, share, and interact with us on Facebook at facebook.com/Vox Podcast.